Hello from Bratislava. It's the morning after the night before, so to speak. I'm recording this the day after the closure of the Sixth Polyglot Gathering. You'll know I've been there if you've been following the daily vlogs I've done from the event. But there I was very much focused on giving you a sense of the vibe of what was going on, a flavour of the many different talks and workshops, and also giving a voice to some of the many participants. But today I want to focus in a bit more on some of the takeaways that I have from those talks that I was able to attend. Now, it's hard, of course, for me to generalise from this. It's very much my own personal experience. There are over 100 talks, mostly in 4 tracks, all running at the same time. And obviously I could only be in one place ever at once. So it's a very personal take, but I thought I'd pull out some of the interesting takeaways that I've got. Starting then firstly with method. There were loads of talks, as usual, on different language learning methods. So language exchanges was a bit of a theme this year for me because I heard 2 talks on that. First of all, Rick Dearman, who always pulls something new, a new rabbit, out of his hat each year. This year he switched topics again. He had time to do 500 language exchanges in a short period. So he was pulling out the conclusions from all that experience for us. And what did it boil down to? Well, several things I remembered. Make an effort to schedule the topics you're going to talk about if you're doing a language exchange. So once you've got over the initial getting to know you phase, you'll run out of things to say if you're not careful. So do think and work on scheduling and thinking about topics that are going to work for you. And then if you can both prepare a little bit, you're going to get all the more out of your exchange. He noted how friendships can develop if you work with someone on an exchange basis for a longer period of time, but he also said don't be afraid to ditch people if you just don't click. Something else he said was that he didn't really particularly like apps because he felt they turned to an extent into a bit of a dating agency. So sometimes it was better to work with the video turned off even, and to go for sites where people didn't have to show their photograph. On the other hand, Tobias Dickmans, who works for an app called actually Tandem, had a different slant. He pointed out that his app is very carefully moderated to make sure that it's not abused. And he also, said a real community was developing around users of the app. There was a lot of support and moderation from his team available to help people get started. What he said also was, though, start when you get to sort of A2 level with a Tandem. That's to say, when you can already say full sentences, and you can deal with the past, because a lot of what you're going to be talking about is, what did you do last week, what have you done since we last spoke, and so on. So if you can already do sentences and talk about the past, that gets you off, puts you in the best position, if you like, to get the most out of using a Tandem. Another talk I really enjoyed to do with methods was Katie Harris talking about how to learn a language by watching films and TV. Katie was stressing in a talk which had lots of practical tips and was underpinned with her knowledge of the research. She's a trained applied linguist. It was a really impressive talk, and she was saying, though, choose materials to watch on telly that you feel excited about, that are going to draw you in. I learned the difference between my captions and my my subtitles. So I now know that captions are what you call the words on the screen if it's in the target language, whereas subtitles are in English or your native language. Now, captions are better to use. Subtitles when you're a beginner, perhaps, or they're better than nothing when you're starting. She said, listen, work with transcripts. That was something else she was saying. Listen as many times as you can to squeeze as much information as you can out of what you're listening to on the TV. So obviously this assumes you're going to record it and you're able to play it through many times. And that way you can start to decipher the way the words are smushed together, as she put it, in connected speech. And then when you've listened as many times as you can turn to the transcript as a sort of controlling mechanism. So she was moving into the area of sound and language, and I think that Nacho Caballero's talk, which was in Spanish, was something similar in many ways. He also at least was an advocate of dictation, to judge from the description in the program book here, although I didn't attend his course and I don't speak Spanish anyway. One that I did attend, where there was also something of an emphasis on sound, was Ruben Adderey's talk on imitating foreign accents. accents. He's an English teacher, but he focuses on working a lot with Spanish speakers. He's from America. He enjoys imitating accents. And he was saying that if we sort of lock on to the typical errors that speakers of our target language make in English, for example, the way that your stock Russian might sound, for example, and try and imitate those and import those, if I were to import that into my Russian, that's going to make me look or sound more authentic. So that was a great talk. Irina Terentieva also spoke on sound. She was talking about using songs to learn languages, again focused on Spanish. That was a talk, unfortunately, that I missed. Staying with methods, I attended Judith Mayer's talk on script hacking. She's just launching a series of books under that title, one of which covers the Greek script, and that was the focus for her talk this time. And she was saying she had various practical ideas. She said to add one letter at a time, overlearn, and make full use of cognates, so words that are similar, such as café, restaurant, or whatever it is, these international words when you're starting out trying to decipher a foreign script. She's got books also on Hebrew, on Russian, a couple of others coming up, I think. They are focused on languages which use alphabets rather than different writing systems, such as the Chinese pictographic system, for example. So that was a really helpful practical talk, I think, from Judith. How to motivate yourself to achieve more was Mariana Lisovska's talk. I'd not heard her speak before. She's a talented speaker, and some of the things that she was talking about sort of overlapped, although dealt with from a different angle, some of the things I said in my own talk, which was reassuring for me to hear. So she put a lot of emphasis on being clear on the purpose of learning, why you're learning the language, and on logging your progress as well, being aware of the sort of psychological ups and downs that we go through the process of learning a language, from initial enthusiasm to the slumps and working up again and pushing on through the whole language learning journey. Now, one of the aspects, I suppose, of this is how we talk to ourselves, our inner scripts, if you like. And Lina Vasquez from Busy Linguist was talking about just this. Her talk was called How Changing the Words We Use Can Change Our Life. And she was very much influenced by ideas from neuro-linguistic processing and talking about how we should reframe, really, the sort of self-talk that we have. So I remember that she was saying, we should not say, I need to do something, I must do something, but I get to do it. Instead of saying I'm good enough, say I'm improving, and instead of thinking about problems, think in terms of challenges. Words, she said, are the driving force behind everything that we do. And she encouraged us to be kind to ourselves, because if we're not kind to ourselves, then subconsciously at least, we will be less inclined to be kind and generous of spirit towards others. So that was solid advice, I think, from the positive thinking vein from Lina there. Going off on a completely different tangent, but still on methods, Anja Spilker, Anja from Almania, she's called. She's a German teacher based in Mexico. She's a regular here at the gathering. She had a really energetic presentation on physical activity, how physical activity increases your language learning success. And she was talking about combining some work on your language, either led by a coach or using audio, probably, with a workout. And that was very funny in that we had a couple of people come to the front and do a bit of a demo for us as well. So everybody got moving. Now, one of the reasons, it turns out, why it's useful to do physical activity when you're learning is that it increases the supply of oxygen to the brain. So moving away from methods, another area which was covered quite well this year, I think, was the brain and neuroscience. Tim Keeley, who's a regular speaker as well, talked about multiple languages in one brain. Examining the executive function. That was the title of his talk. What it was actually about was the different types of memory and how we can use them and understand them and improve them for our language learning. So long-term memory, short-term memory, and working memory in the middle. So that was a detail-packed talk with a lot of practical takeaways too. Marta Nowakowska is a veterinary science PhD student, and she knows a lot about the science of the brain. So I've now got my Broca's and my Wernicke's areas differentiated in my head, if you like. I know what the asphesias of both are, how that works. I know about WADA tests and Doppler sonography. So a lot of technical stuff there. It wasn't really linked up to practical language learning, but I don't think it always needs to be. Some of us want to understand what's going on what for us, I suppose, is, although very physical, it's a theoretical level, isn't it? And it does bring home to us as well that we've all basically, in a way, in a sense, got the same brains. That was a message from my talk as well, that we all actually have to memorise and encode and learn in the same way. And she was shedding light on what we share in common as learning machines, if you like, by focusing on some of the things, weird things that can happen, but, following a predictable pattern if things go wrong up top. So that was the brain and neuroscience. Another theme coming through was Indigenous and minority languages. Brian Liu talked about saving Indigenous languages. He pointed out the rate of loss, the scary rate of loss of languages, and said that official recognition could really help. For example, some of the states in Central and South America do recognise several of the Indigenous languages in the Constitution, and that can be a really helpful first step. And he mentioned projects like First Voices, which are trying to mobilise and encourage language revival and language rescue. Dave Prine spoke in a similar vein, and he also mentioned useful websites and projects that one can look to if you're interested in making a contribution towards saving and helping Indigenous languages. So he mentioned the Endangered Language Project and the Endangered Language Alliance. This is maybe starting to sound a bit like the Judean People's Front and the People's Front of Judea, I'm not sure. But there are a lot of different bodies out there, and I'm sure they're all doing great work. Andre Müller as well talked about working with how do you go about learning minority languages where there are few resources available. That was a talk, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but it was there on the programme. Then the pure entertainment, maybe. I want to mention a couple of talks which just had a great entertainment value. So Alexandra Medjedovic was talking about swear words in different languages. With this background noise, I don't know if you can hear it, I'm next to a building site, inclined to try a few of them out on you now. But he gave a very interesting talk looking at the different traditions of curse words in different languages. And he is himself, I think, a Serbian who's lived in Germany, grew up in Germany, now lives in Turkey, and speaks French as well, and many other languages, and has had a lot of practical experience at the front line in the world of swearing. And how can we generalise from all the examples he gave? He did it on a country-by-country basis. Well, there's a lot of cursing around priests and nuns in Italy. That's one thing I remember. And also be careful in Turkey before you insult anybody's football team. And one other final thing, the poor old donkey always gets it. Now, Stefano Swigo gave a great talk about body language in Italian, particularly the language of the hands in Italian. So what can I say about that? I don't know whether that was right. So that was, some of the range of the talks that were on offer this year for us. One more I wanted to mention, Ed Davidson from the channel La Perfection, and also the great new Learning German channel Double Deutsch, which he's doing with Lina Vasquez, just started up, gave a great talk talking about the first few years of his time out of college having studied language. And he had some really practical advice for any of you out there who are studying languages, thinking of going to study languages at college, and what happens next. And he said when you graduate, always take the hard option. He went deliberately to live in places where he would have to use the language. So he went to live in Paris, he went to live in Barcelona, he then wound up in Brazil. He took the hard options. He had to earn some money, so he started doing jobs such as customer service using the languages, which meant he got a lot of practice. But he did say, Boring jobs are boring even if you're doing them in a foreign language. So the key for him, for his career takeoff, if you like, in videography and in language teaching, was to acquire other skills besides the languages he'd come out of college with. It was this combination of skills, language learning and something where there's a practical market, which really led him to a life where he's now doing things he loves doing and he's interested in doing, but also using his languages all the time. So that was, I think, really solid advice. Now, there were a whole range of other talks, as I say, that I didn't attend, or some that I haven't been able to mention because time is limited, but I wanted to share with you some of the content, and I hope you found this video therefore valuable. Now at the very end, the next venue is announced. That's going to be in Poland, so we know that at the end of May next year we'll have another Polyglot Gathering and another feast of language learning information and inspiration from some of the regulars, and no doubt once again some new inspiring speakers. Thanks a lot for watching. If you've got any questions about any of the speakers or the topics that I've mentioned, do, let me have comments underneath. Similarly, if you were at the gathering and there are standout talks that you'd like to draw our attention to, just drop those in the comments too. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for the vibe, throw me a thumbs up, tickle that bell, and share the affair. Bye!